Hello and welcome everyone to the May 2023 Evergreen Cataloging Interest Group. I am Jennifer Weston. I'm the facilitator of this fine group and joined by many members of the organizing committee whose names you will see at the top of the agenda, which I will now share my screen so you can see what I'm talking about. You should all have access to this agenda. I dropped a link in the chat box. So let me share my screen. Just share. The screen itself. There we are. Okay. Now, are you seeing my screen that looks like the agenda?
Yeah. Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So now to finish my note, there are many members of the organizing committee that are here with us today whose names are listed at the top of the agenda, which you can now see. Let me make this a little bit bigger. There we go. So it'll show up nicely on the recording. We are recording and this will be shared on the wiki as always. If there happens to be anybody new in our group, and we have so many of us, which is fabulous, it's hard to tell. So I will say, if you're new to us, we use this agenda as our official meeting notes. So immediately after this call, well, within half an hour or so, I will post this up to the wiki. And the recording is usually up in 24 to 48 hours. Several of you are very kind to remind me if I don't get those up in the time, and I really do appreciate that. So I'm trying to do better about sending a note out to the listserv to let you know when the recordings are ready to go. So today we're just coming together a little bit more informally than usual. We're going to talk about just reminder of some of the conference presentations, celebrate being together, and celebrate those of you that were able to join us remotely, and celebrate our time to come back together and plan for the rest of the year. But some of the things that came out of the conference were very specific projects we wanted to talk about at our very first meeting after the conference. A couple of those are study groups and interest group updates. Some of them are new study groups and interest groups. One of them is bid frame study group, no groaning allowed. That's why you're all muted for the moment. But we've got some very exciting ways we can tackle or start thinking about bid frame as far as a study group. And we've got to talk about it. We can't ignore it. And the time has come. So that's why Galen is with us today. He put together a very nice presentation whose slides are included here on this agenda when we get to the bottom. So in just a moment, I'm going to turn the microphone and the host duties back over to Galen to talk a little about that and how we can be involved from the ground floor. That's probably the wrong metaphor right now, but yes, from the very beginning, as we start thinking about it, BibFrame as an evergreen community. I'll also introduce user interface interest group. And Stephanie Leary is not able to be with us today. She did several wonderful presentations at the conference about this user interface interest group. I'll talk a little more about what that is, but there's a link to the wiki that's been created for that very new interest group. So I'll talk a little more about that. We've got a few updates from the authorities working group and what some upcoming development is going to, how that's going to benefit the authorities working group. And Feedback Fest is going on. So in the interest of time, I'm going to skip over our usual standing agenda notes. So again, potentially new people, if you're here, we have standing agenda items to where we have links to our wiki. I do want to say there's a new authorities working group wiki. So in the authorities working group update, I'll talk a little more about that, but we do have just a single page for now. It's in a very rough draft form, but I did want to let you know that that lives and it is there for people to start reviewing it and looking at all the resources we're putting together. So I'll skip over release notes. There's not been a new release since we were last together, but there is one coming very soon, which is why Feedback Fest is going on. So I'll skip over that for now. Celebrations. The Evergreen Conference was indeed a huge success. So if I hear any yays and celebration in the chat, I will second all of those. Because we had a grand time being together. The folks in Worcester and CW Mars, the local planning team, did a great job planning. And it was really good to see us all there. So thanks to everybody who attended remotely, everybody who presented, everybody who helped plan, everybody who participated in any way. And thanks to all of you here today to continue the conversations of the conference. So woohoo, it was great. I agree. Continuing with our list of celebrations, Feedback Fest is this week and Taryn is with us. We want to say thank you to Taryn for always keeping us organized for Feedback Fest. And Taryn, I just pulled from your email the links to the list of test servers and where to report issues in your kind note to help. But is there anything you want to say to this group since I didn't ask you in advance? Okay, Taryn doesn't have a microphone. Yes, I just pulled right from the email she sent yesterday. And as always, it's got lots of great information in there. And Taryn is, of course, an excellent resource if you have any questions at all. Feedback Fest is, of course, our time to be able to test out things that are going on and the very true sense of the word to test and then provide our test results. But there are all kinds of ways you can get involved. And so please see her email if you haven't already, or email Taryn with any questions you might have. I'll kind of leave that there because I can go on and on about the importance of testing, but I think this group knows that. I feel a little bit like I'm preaching to the choir when I say that. So thanks for all the work you already do testing. One important thing I will say is community server right now is on 3.9. If you're using that for testing purposes, you haven't been able to see 3.10 yet. So these servers are a good opportunity to see both 3.10 and 3.11 if you just want to take a sneak look there. Taryn does have a note that there aren't many new cataloging patches to test this time, but you can make sure your standard workflows work with 3.11. And again, if you want to see what 3.10 looks like and you haven't had an opportunity, it's there too because it's 3.11. If you just want to kind of walk through and see what these screens are looking like and if there are unexpected or anything that you're seeing that you didn't expect to see changing because it's not listed as a bug to test. So try it out, kick the tires. So I'm just going to go through this quickly. We've been celebrating upgrades. Has anybody upgraded since the last time? Maggie. Yes, you updated from, oh my goodness, that's right. Maggie, I think you get the, what's the word? Hazard Pay Award of the Year from going from 3.6 to 3.10. So how did it go? Are you doing okay? You're here. That's a celebration.
Yeah, so far so good.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, no worries. You're warriors. You're fine. By all accounts, it does sound like you are just have approached that fearlessly and it has gone well. So I am glad to hear that. Yeah, Mackenzie, you did have a big leap last year too. Yes. And I can hear your laugh there. I'll go back and check our notes. Anybody else upgraded that they want to celebrate? And if CW Mars plan to do theirs just before the conference, again, talk about fearless. Anybody else has, just drop us a note so we can celebrate you too, and I'll add it to the notes. Okay. And I said that my notes were, Al is coming up later this year. All right, Catherine, you're going from 3.6 to 3.10. Oh, see, you've got a buddy. You can talk to Niagara Falls and see how that went for them. That's fantastic. Carol says CW Mars, but you only went to 3.7.4, so it went smoothly. Yeah, but an upgrade's an upgrade, and especially just before the conference. So congratulations on that, Carol. And I think I've captured that. I will say you should all have editing permissions if anybody wants to add notes. Bear with me for a moment. Let me make sure that's true. Nope, it's not true. It will be in a moment. Now you're there you go. Yeah, so if anybody wants to add notes as we go along, feel free. Okay. If I've missed anybody, let me know. I'm trying to read back through chat carefully here because we do like to celebrate upgrades. And there will be a little time at the end here if we in discussion. If anybody has questions or just wants to talk about how that went, but I'm going to keep going for now. I have not updated the meeting schedule. I will. One thing I will say is that the interest group leaders met as an interest group. So the interest group leaders interest group met at the conference. And one of the things that came out of that is we are going to look towards having a shared calendar, a genuinely shared calendar. That's not just one that everybody links their own individual calendars to. So that should be coming soon. Perfect, Mackenzie, the meta interest group. I like that a lot. So it would prevent me from having to do all of the things that, I usually just go to all the individual wiki pages or the notes and there is a community calendar, but all I can say is just I ran out of time. So here's the community calendar. I will update the notes. If you want to go to the community calendar, it will tell you everybody that has a meeting on there so far. But yes, yay, I can't wait until hopefully by our next meeting, we'll have that community calendar in place. But we do like to celebrate all of our interest groups, and we're going to have so many more to add on that. So Authorities Working Group isn't on there yet. We've now got the users interface interest group that'll go on here. So I'm just thrilled to see this group continue to grow. Oh, also exciting news. The circulation interest group is not trying. They're a group of people that are putting together the circulation interest group to meet more routinely. So that's also good news. DIG meets on June 1st. Yay. And that, of course, would be a Thursday. Thanks, Debbie. Gotcha. Anybody else wants to toss those in there? Please do. Yep, and we do have a wiki page now. That's right. Gotcha. This is very exciting. I really do love to see this many interest groups working together. Anybody has any announcements about interest group work? Again, feel free to drop that in chat and I will get it in the notes. Okay, I am going to pause for a moment on the Celebrating All Things Conferencey because I want us to take time at the end of our meeting to see if any of, and I fear I didn't get everything. I will go back and do that. But any of these things that you want to continue conversations in future cataloging interest group meetings, I want to make sure we capture that. And of course, it doesn't have to just be today, but if anything sparked an idea and you're thinking, we really need to talk more about this that came out of these meetings, so I've got a little note here so that we can come back and capture that. And feel free to send that to the list anytime too. Talking quickly to work my way up to Galen's presentation so we can talk about this BibFrame study group because this is a new initiative we want to kick off today. And the rest of this is very much informative. So, but we do want to start here because this is one that's going to need action from our group. And I've got a link to the slides that Galen did a presentation on kind of just, was it slouching towards BibFrame, which is very appropriate. And then he's already added the slides for the study group proposal. So Galen, do you want me to just turn over host duties to you?
Yes, please.
And there you are. Just a moment where I find you. There you are. And take it away, Galen.
Okay. So let me go share my screen. All right. So hopefully you all are seeing the title slide for the proposal. Excellent. So as a brief background for this proposal, 20 years ago, give or take, Roy Tennant pronounced the death of Mark. And well, like that peasant in the movie, Mark ain't dead yet. But of course, active measures are being taken to end it, or perhaps to put it another way, to come up with a successor that meets more recent sensibilities about managing large piles of metadata. And, of course, for the past 10, 15 years, there's been quite a bit of discussion about linked data and semantic web approaches. But BibFrame nowadays stands out there as the framework that is actively being supported, or perhaps more correctly, experimented with by the Library of Congress. So while, of course, collectively the profession isn't under an obligation to follow whatever LC does, obviously they wield a great deal of weight. So my presentation at the conference, slouching towards BibFrame, which in addition to the slides is now also available on the Evergreen YouTube channel, along with a variety of other presentations, was essentially meant to be a statement of where we might end up with respect to BibFrame support in Evergreen. And of course, the answer is at the moment, we're not there yet. And I think like many who do not themselves work for the Library of Congress or OCLC, or who have been engaged in experimentation with linked data, what Evergreen, what iOS support for BibFrame actually means is still an open question. But on the other hand, I think we're now at the point where there's more hooks for us to sink our teeth into about the BibFrame to come up with an utterly mangled metaphor. So apologies for that. But I think we're on the cusp of being able to look at things that aren't just a lot of theoretical discussion about semantic web technologies or experimental linked data editors that would be difficult to actually use in practice, to give a nod to the user interface interest group. And, some sense that, Mark will actually find its successor, and that it probably will be some sort of linked data approach. But one of the other takeaways is that there's been very little direct public library representation or consortial representation in the discussions around BibFrame. The discussions, have been largely the realm of national libraries, academic libraries, especially large ones, and state libraries and other cultural heritage institutions, but relatively little in the way of public library representation. And in this case, by public library, I mean the sort of library that isn't the likes of, say, New York Public, where there is or was a significant technical staff, as well as, at times, a direct mandate to also be a research library. But as far as the average public library in or outside of an Evergreen consortium, there's been little discussion at the level of, if this replaces Mark, how do we do our copycat login? How do we deal with the fact that, in a typical group of public libraries, you have experience and staffing levels ranging from a large urban public library that is still doing original cataloging, particularly for non-English language materials, all the way down to libraries where the only cataloging assistance is the director, who has a precious little time. So there needs to be more representation if BibFrame is to become the basis of something that actually means something concrete in our iOSs, as well as something that public libraries can engage with without becoming completely dependent on the large bibliographic utilities. Now, of course, maybe that's the future. Maybe we all end up with our metadata sitting in WorldCat, and that's the end of it. But there are a number of reasons to not embrace that kind of a centralization. But like I said, there are now enough tools and software and examples of BibFrame metadata that there are now concrete things to experiment with. So that takes me to my rationale for a study group. If one of the issues, view broadly, is to prepare for the next generation of library catalog metadata, be it BibFrame or something else, and to articulate what BibFrame support would actually need for us, I think there needs to be education within and by Evergreen community members to grapple with what BibFrame is, what tools are out there, and how all of this might actually fit together. And the beauty of it nowadays is, unlike 5 years ago, there is actually concrete things to work with. And there's also some possibility of finding some concrete applications where we can make use of BibFrame metadata to enhance our catalogs and to find some concrete things to embrace kind of the hybrid MARC / linked data ecosystem that we almost necessarily need to live in, short of doing something really drastic and completely re-architecting how Evergreen handles metadata. And of course, the big thing overall is figuring out what we don't know yet and need to learn more about. So I think objectives would be bringing together catalogers and developers. And I say catalogers specifically, not just metadata librarians, because I do think we do need to have focus and bring a unique perspective into the realm of the public library cataloger who has specific things to get done, who can't necessarily spend a lot of time talking about metaphysics, which is of course something that linked data discussions quite literally can turn into. Another objective would be experimenting with existing tools, finding out what events and conferences Evergreen libraries should be paying attention to, as well as figure out who we should be talking to. So I know already of at least one case where the state library of a state with a big Evergreen consortium is themselves doing BibFrame experimentation. There, are presumably also other trailblazer public libraries, both in North America and I think outside North America. And it's important to keep in mind that BibFrame and library linked data in general is a global effort. And even before linked data, that there were ways that libraries outside of North America were using MARC that would have been incredibly helpful had North American and in particular US libraries adopted some of those practices. So the format I'm suggesting for this working group is first having this be something that starts off with a definitive time limit. So not something that we just spend the next couple years occasionally talking about BibFrame, but set a defined endpoint. During the conference, I was originally thinking 3 to 4 months. 6 months might be a bit better. And with, I think the central event being a monthly meeting and show and tell session where we report to each other on our experimentation, where we discuss articles and papers that we've chosen together as a reading list, and potentially bring in invited speakers to share their expertise with us. With, I think, the initial step being an organizational meeting. So, where I have some logistical questions would be, which mailing list do we use? And we could, of course, choose to use Evergreen catalogers for that in the interest of keeping the discussion as visible as possible. But it's probably also worth discussing whether to create a separate mailing list just for the study group, so that anybody who hops into Evergreen catalogers just wanting to ask a typical question doesn't get scared off. So that's an open question. What our regular meeting time should be, and my feeling there is that I think we should be doing an update of the progress of the study group during the cataloging interest group meetings. The actual study group meetings record time should probably be different, as I think otherwise the study group could completely overwhelm the agenda. And then related to seeking expertise and invited speakers, figuring out who we should reach out to. And of course, who we should reach out to could include the people in this meeting. If you are secretly a BibFrame expert and can tell us what to do, please, by all means, speak up. Pardon me. And then to suggest some outcomes for the working group, they could include things like putting together a proof of concept on exporting and importing BibFrame data into an Evergreen catalog, compiling some sort of discussion paper explaining what BibFrame support ideally would mean to Evergreen libraries, and potentially putting together a plan for next steps. And I should mention that pretty much any plan that isn't just ignore BibFrame and hope it goes away would very likely require significant changes to Evergreen. And of course, those would be changes that would require one way or another finding the resources to pull off. So when I say plan for next steps, ideally that plan would be something that would be pretty concrete, the sort of thing where goals can be identified and it potentially is suitable as a basis for trying to write grants. So that takes me to the end of my presentation. So I think at this point, I'd like to, turn the host duties back to Jennifer, but also, spend at least a little bit of a time, figuring out what sort of answers that we can have to the initial logistical questions.
Fantastic. Thanks, Galen. I will just try to, are you sending it back to me?
Yeah.
Okay. Just wait on my note. And I will add, you're not seeing double. Galen's cat is both on Galen's login and on the one for the Evergreen project, which is how I am logged in. I'm just going to share my screen again. Which sadly, it took me someone else to ask me at the end of one of these meetings, Galen. They said, that, they talk about the cat. I said, that's a gorgeous cat. And they said, Jennifer, it's your cat. I said, not my cat. But I was talking and George was there. Your cat is the mascot for the whole Evergreen project. I love it.
Yeah, and I think this will be, a one-time opportunity. I had not realized that the cat had propagated that far. So anyway.
Yeah, I was just going to say to anybody watching too, that they really, it's not duplicated. They're both of us. Okay, let's find, I'm just going to place to put notes. I'm following in the chat while you were talking, and yes, so everybody is enjoying the cats. But I think in general, I'm seeing no argument against creating a separate bib frame mailing list, and quite a bit of support for it. So yes, I think having a new bib frame mailing list, let's go from here, discussion. So we want to create a new bib frame mailing list. And I will say that we can just put, you can subscribe. I can put the link to it on the cataloging interest group wiki. So at least that'll be somewhere where it's discoverable about how to subscribe, in addition to just the overall, connect with us or whatever it is on the Evergreen wiki. So link to on Evergreen wiki and CatAgi wiki. Okay. Next question. You getting some really positive feedback here too. Let's see there. Okay. Real question from Jonathan. Why is Library of Congress looking at replacing Mark? Well, that's a question that could take a while, but Galen, that's all you if you've got a short answer.
Right. So the short answer is part of the motivation, I think, for the Library of Congress is that since they're not just a bibliographic, they're not just running their own catalog, but are essentially a seed bib utility to, well, bluntly, the entire world, or at least a good chunk of it. They do have a lot of practical problems where the nature of the MARC record gets in the way of large-scale management of metadata. So I think in the case of LC, there's a very practical interest in experimenting with ways to, say, do authority control more easily that isn't dependent on string matching, to be able to hoover up additional sources of metadata and so forth. And happily for LC, more recently, they exist in a context where I think that the current Librarian of Congress is much more open to supporting that sort of experimentation, than was the case with her predecessor. So that would be my take on at least a couple reasons why they're so heavily invested in BibFrame, is that all of the other reasons about revolutionizing the bibliographic universe aside, they're very much at the pointy end of a lot of the practical limitations of MARC when dealing with it at scale.
Thank you. I'm just going to share what Trisha, I think, has voiced what probably a lot of people are feeling, that been hearing about it for so long. It's just something you kind of feel like it's never going to happen. But hearing you, Galen, talk about it just makes it, I'm going to take the word horribly real, but let's just say makes it real and something that we can act on. And I think that's kind of where I am too. For so long, we've been hearing about it, but there was really nothing we can do. But I think we very, as you said in your presentation, there are things we can do at this point, and there are efforts out there that we can study. We can see, how feasible the existing options are that are out there, at least the theoretical options are that are out there, and the things that are being employed by large universities, to see what that might mean for public libraries. So it gives us something to look at concretely and to talk about concretely, and not in the metaphysical world. So now's the time, though. Elaine has threatened to retire before they had to move to BibFrame, and I think she's successfully doing that. So congratulations yet again to Elaine for perfect timing. Well, see, that RDA was retirement date approaching, but that led you right to BibFrame. Okay, so let's see, any more questions we had there. Create a new mailing list, regular meeting time, and then the other one was, who should we reach out to? I believe those were your 3 logistical questions. Who can we reach out to? Let me ask this question back in response to the regular meeting time, would it be good to set up a single meeting time for that kind of kickoff organizing call, and then from there work with the people that are gathered on that day to pick a regular meeting time?
Yeah, I think organizational meeting first, and I can go ahead and circulate a doodle poll, but it would be shooting to have the organizational meeting take place this month.
Okay. Poll for May meeting. Gotcha. Is that something we would send out just to the general list?
I think I would be inclined to target the general list, the catalogers, catalog and IG list, and the developers list.
Okay, just taking notes. I think I've got that. I do want to say and let me just ask this question before I share anything on here. Jessica Efron from NC Cardinal, we've been kind of chatting on, as Gayla mentioned, there are people in the community that are already working on some linked data projects. And I don't know, Jessica, if you want to just say a moment about what you are doing, just to let people know that there is some real work that's being done in Evergreen communities already. Or do you have your microphone?
I was actually just typing in a caveat, because we do have like preliminary information and research, but our linked data projects are not MARC based.
Right.
So they've been, we have like some online resources that we publish, and we have a huge digital collection. And those are the two, but we do have a lot of initial research, because when we started, nobody knew what linked data was. Mm-hmm. So there's a list somewhere of YouTube videos and just publications, literary or academic publications about like getting started. And I can provide those before a first meeting.
That would be fabulous.
Thank you.
And I think one of the things I heard you say is it's not MARC. And I think that's one of the things we have to get used to too, is we may very well be working in a world that is not MARC. Or some
yes. There are only 2 catalogers for the state library part that's doing the project. So we could not do any MARC linked data experimentation, because only one of us is on the team. So yeah. But I mean, it carries over. It's really interesting once you figure it out. We had kind of an aha moment, I think, some of us later than others, but you can see the potential, and it's very exciting.
Yeah, I can't wait to see it demoed. So even if you're just interested in it, to see what it looks like, that first meeting is the place to be. Okay, so Galen, you will send us a doodle poll. Yeah, Mackenzie did have to mention the concept of linked data triples. Yeah, that's something I've heard talked about in presentations. I know that. That's all I know, is that there's terminology that means linked data. So there we go.
There's a subject, there's an object, and there is some sort of verb/relationship connecting it.
Great. Fantastic. That's all we need, really.
Yeah.
Subjects, objects, right?
Yep. So I think, it's almost like sentence structure. I think, because I think predicate is, I think, one of the terms in it. Maybe. I might be blanking, but once it was like, oh yeah, you got the origin thing, you got the thing it's pointing to you, and you have the connection point to it, and that's the triple.
That's probably the most succinct explanation I think I've ever heard, and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I feel like there's more to it in terms of like things having like the constant indicate like the constants and whatnot, but like the triple concept itself.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, like I said, once I got it, I was like, oh. So
you see how Mackenzie just volunteers himself for things like this?
I'm not volunteering myself for things. I'm just helping.
I know. I'm gonna pick on you, but I do appreciate any information Yes. No, I was going to say any information you have to share is very much appreciated.
Yeah, I was very tempted to chat and be like, yes, I recognize I'm an academic librarian here. Please don't ask me about BibFrame. I know just as much as the rest of you.
Yeah. But you know Evergreen, and that's where we're all starting from a common starting place. Okay. And that's what brings us together. So, yay. All right. I won't do the usual, just ask the open floor asking who wants to join in. You'll know how to find us. There'll be a doodle poll. There'll be an announcement that'll go out on the lists. And there will be links to join the mailing list. There'll be all kinds of ways to get involved. So I won't start calling anybody out yet to voluntold you.
And I do want to jump in to mention that as best as I can manage, I do want to make sure that the discussions and the reading material and so on are as organized and openly available as possible, so that it would be feasible that if you don't want to jump into the hurly-burly of the of the study group meetings per se, that it will nonetheless be a viable means of participating to simply read along at your own pace.
Mm-hmm. And you envision the wiki being the place where that's stored?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that works for me. I mean, it's on a much smaller scale. That's one of the things we're trying to accomplish with the authorities working group too, is to share everything we've learned and we're working on. So I think that's great. Anything else? I know the third question there was who can we reach out to? Is that something you want to talk about today?
So I think at this point, if anybody has any names immediately in mind, feel free to toss it out in chat. But otherwise, either bring them to the organizational meeting or feel free to drop me a line directly.
Okay. Fantastic. Let me see. I'm reading the rest of the chat here. Mackenzie makes, and I thank you for that testimony there, Mackenzie, about no one switching to BibFrame tomorrow. It's not something we have to do right away, but for many of us, the reason we're on the authorities working group is cool. So we want to learn about how it works. So that we're all kind of at the same place. Yeah, Elaine's right. Someone at DLC would be good. Yeah, we can put together some examples there. Jessica's still sending notes just to me, but they found the LD4 linked data group to be great. And that's actually one of the things that we're looking at. There's an LD4 conference coming up. And one of the slides, Galen mentioned that one of the things we can do is watch these online conferences that are talking about linked data and BibFrame, especially those that are free, and just see if we can't, as a group or as interested parties, see what we can glean from those. Mackenzie attended the LD4 conference last year. So yeah, that's the kind of thing that we can bring to the group and share anything that you've seen through the years. I know that I guess sort of a year ago I sat in and on one of the BibFrames, and some of it does go quite a bit over our head too, and especially when the academics start talking about their specific products. But yeah, there are organizations out there that are talking about this. So if we can kind of collectively look into what those conversations are all about and just trying to see what it means to us. Jessica makes good points. You can kind of pick and choose. Especially if things are recorded, watch them on our own time. All right, we're excited.
In terms of other people to reach out to, would someone who is working on, either working on Folio or looking into implementing Folio be worth talking to? Just because that is an open source BibFrame based ILS that is at least further ahead than us on that front.
I didn't say much about Folio during the today, but I very much agree with you, Mackenzie, and I'd also mentioned them during my presentation at the conference. but yeah, the Folio project is quite open in terms of materials that they put out on their Confluence at Wiki. So in addition to identifying and reaching out to some Folio people and libraries, there's a wealth of written material to work through.
I think we may find that there's an abundance of information online to shift through from various sources. So our job's going to be to do that sifting through. We got that. There is a conference coming up that we'll share too. That's a BibFrame Europe, but it's not just Europe. It's again free to attend. So we can put those kinds of that information up on the wiki too about upcoming conferences that are free and online. Elaine's given us this great link to LOC resource there. Got that. Okay. Excellent start. Thank you so much for bringing this to us, Galen, and for asking us to be part of it.
Thank you.
We've got just about a little less than 10 minutes left here, which is fantastic. So I'm glad that one of the things we really wanted to do after the conference was kick off this initiative. So we've accomplished that. Yay, us. I will not say a lot about the user interface group next. I did want to let you know it's there. This is something that if you were at the conference and were able to attend remotely, if you saw either of Stephanie's presentation, she did a great job expressing where she thought this group could go and the kinds of things that could be accomplished in the short term and the longer term. Things from everything from consistency, and she talks about accessibility. There is a wiki there, and I mentioned that at the start of our meeting. If you want to see kind of the direction where this group is going, if you're interested in sitting in on a meeting from time to time. They have not had their first online meeting yet. She will be scheduling it soon, but you will need to sign up for, they also have a separate mailing list. So if you want to be on that group, I would encourage you to go to their wiki page and sign up so that you can stay up to date on the work that's going on there, because it'll very much overlap with what we do. I know she was so very kind to us when she first joined the team here at Equinox to say, if you have anything that looks like it's accessibility, just put in Launchpad, put that accessibility tag on there, and she would research it. And she's been true to her word. So there are lots and lots of Launchpad bugs out there with that accessibility tag on them. So yes, use that accessibility tag, and Stephanie will review them all, and then we'll have prioritize and all of the work there is to be done. So she's helping the community prioritize how to move forward. And part of that is doing this as an interest group. I am going to skip the authorities working group update for today. We are meeting tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern time. I will send that information out to the general cataloging interest group if anybody wants to join us. We do have some really cool updates from the conference that we've learned, some dev work that's being released that's going to make our lives a little happier and better in the authorities world. One of our goals is going to be to document exactly what that is and then share it with the group. So if you don't want to, if you're unable to make yet another meeting this week, that's one of the things we'll be picking up tomorrow, is talking about how we document that and start tracking this kind of thing and sharing it and get our wiki updated. So I'll just skip that there. Not a lot of time for general discussion. I will say, however, I want to scroll back up to the top here, not only to make sure that I get everybody's names here that presented, to say thank you one more time. Let me know if I missed you. If there's anything on this list that you want us to revisit, please send a note to me or to the list. It doesn't have to be just to me. And we will certainly make sure that we can expand upon these presentations that were made at the conference. We can just ask the presenter to perhaps come and present to us again. Anything that sparked an idea out of any other presentation that you thought, gosh, we really need to talk about this more as a group, please let us know. I'd like for this to be just idea generating as much as just a one-time presentation. Encourage you to participate in Feedback Fest. Thanks. I know that we're right at time. So those of you who are leaving, thank you for being here today. Let's see, I'm scrolling slowly. One announcement is June. Date is going to need to be rescheduled for several of us have conflicts on the organizing committee. So we want to make sure, let me say this loudly, we are absolutely, positively meeting in the month of June because it will be Elaine's last meeting before she retires. So there's no way we're not meeting in June. We just haven't chosen a date yet. So that will be coming very soon. Watch your calendars, but it will not be on the usual June 13th. If you were not at the conference, gosh, that's one of the things I skipped over here at the top. One of the things we did is we celebrated Elaine at the cataloging interest group meeting, and I will ask her permission to share with the community. One of the things we did is we put together a Wordle that was in the shape of a cat, and so many of you contributed to that and sent me very kind words to express how we all feel about how special she's been to this community. So, okay, she's given me permission, so I will do that. I'll add it to the notes, and we will make sure that we share how all of your words came together to create what was really just a nice little small token of our appreciation to Elaine. So I just wanted to let you know that we did appropriately make sure that that was put in her hands. So from all of you across this continent and beyond even, thank you for being part of that and helping us put together a nice honor for her. We just got 5 minutes left. Anybody want to add anything to our discussion? Anybody have a Launchpad bug? We didn't take time for that. Feel free to, as always. Drop those in the on the list. I know that we've got a lot going on. Oh, absolutely. I can hear you.
This is Christine from the BC Libraries Cooperative. I just had a Launchpad bug to bring to everyone. It's 2015163. The fixed field grid in the enhanced mark editor is not being updated when you change the characters in the grid.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wanted to flag it for people to take a look at. It's a problem for us in 3.9.1 because, you know, when you change like the type, the other fields within the grid are not automatically updating. So it's making it harder to choose the right values based on your item type. And so it looks like 20 other people have already marked it as affecting them. So it may have already gotten some community attention, but since you were asking and we had a couple of minutes,
yeah, absolutely.
Flag it.
This is the group to say those things out loud and get attention. All righty. Ooh, that's large. Anybody else want to drop Launchpad bug on here? I've seen several on lists lately. I'll see if I can't go back those and add them to the notes. Thanks, Christine. Add heat, please.
Thank you.
Add heat in discussion. We'll just say in discussion. I know that, and I'm not going to start a conversation about monograph parts, but know that there was a conversation about monograph parts. And so we will be following up on the progress of those particular Launchpad bugs. Also on the list as kind of a review of the things that are coming or are still in progress. So look for monograph. I'll just say look for more details on monograph bug parts. Oh, that is not a word. Parts. New div. Okay. Ongoing. Okay, there you go. But we are saying hooray.
I would suggest renaming that for monograph parts since it's not just monograph that get parts.
Yes. Absolutely. So many times I have to explain. Yes, not just monograph parts anymore. Yep.
I was looking at the test server, the Festivus one, and I saw in the library settings there is a setting for requiring the part or to put parts on if a part is already on, but it was given the tag of circulation, which I found puzzling.
Oh, I was following. I'm like, yes, I know the bug you're talking about. And then you just threw me for a loop. I'm like, so the tag itself had circulation on it, Mary. I missed that one. All right. Look for monograph parts bug with circ tag. Okay. We'll look for,
Yeah, it's in library setting. It's not the bug. The
Oh.
bug itself isn't
Oh.
things. When you go to library settings, then you know how they have labels like ban delay and acquisitions and all that. This says circulation. And I was wondering why it's in that category.
Library setting. The graph part has a circ label. Now I'm with you. Yep. Does that look right, Mary?
Yeah, that's fine.
So kept you close enough. Okay. Okay. Looks like we missed you, Mary.
Oh, well, thank you. That's nice of you to say.
We really did.
Yes, we did.
Oh, thank you.
All right. Well, we are at the top of the hour. I am going to close the recording. As always, we'll stick around for a few more minutes if anybody else wants to continue discussing anything they want to just chat about or make sure it ends up on the notes. Thanks to Galen one more time for bringing BibFrame to us. Thanks to all of you in advance that are going to sit in on that first BibFrame conversation and help us start a study group. And for everything else you're doing, always, 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 thank you so much. And look for the notice about when we'll meet in June. We'll see you next month.